I thrive off of change. I'm like one of those weird people that if things aren't changing constantly, I'm not okay. And I realize that that's an anomaly because most people, they want things to stay the same. And so in the workplace, you're going to have to keep in mind that regardless of changing consumer trends or needs, employees are probably going to want to do the same job function and have business as usual because that's their comfort zone.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Brainwork Framework. With us today is the president of Tuxedo Concepts, Stephanie Gutnik. We're going to be talking all about business, marketing, and leadership. So excited to have her on. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. So excited to have you on. We always like to ask our guests, tell us about your journey. What were you doing before that kind of led you into what you're doing today?
I've been fascinated with people's journeys as well. I read a lot of books about founders of companies and how they got to where they were. And it's very rare that it's this clear, direct path. People tend to have stories that jump from one unexpected position to another. And I really appreciate that about a career path as opposed to trying to control everything, which certainly I did when I was starting out. But I've had roles in public and private companies spanning different functions, everything from marketing to business development and strategy, and overseeing an entire team, which brings about all those different facets together. Product is another interest. So currently, when you become a jack of all trades, it kind of makes sense to start your own thing and see if that can fly. So I began Tuxedo Concepts and very much am able to help different companies globally with whatever challenge they might be facing, whether it's choosing a tech partner to fit a certain need, so helping with the evaluation process there and putting together the agreements, or if it's some marketing assistance and PR. I'm just having fun juggling some different opportunities right now.
That is very exciting. So you're a jack of all trades, or maybe a Jackie of all trades. I don't know if that term fits loosely enough, but you're just bringing all this past experience to the table, starting your own thing. And it's true, many of us entrepreneurs, sometimes we don't see it coming or we ever expect to get into business, but suddenly here we are. Why not? Let's try it. So this is a new venture for you, but a lot of past experience that you're bringing to the table, just helping businesses. What does it take to be successful? What does a good business look like?
It's a great question, especially as everybody is so focused on back to office and AI and Gen Z and expectations around all of these different elements. And what I would say is, I truly believe that at the end of the day, it comes down to hard work. We as humans, whether or not we're using different tools at our disposal, AI definitely should be something that's used when it's needed and in a productive way. But we need to feel good about what it is that we're doing, have some sort of passion that we bring to the job, and work hard. When it used to be once upon a time, as I was working my way up, and even now, I'm the first one to start and the last one to finish. That is an example of something where we need to be more flexible because when we're working across time zones and people with different needs, I think that's a little bit outdated. But the essence is, can I get things done and can I demonstrate productivity? And that's where my head is at in terms of what drives success.
Absolutely. And it is an interesting viewpoint, just as the trends are changing and new generations are coming, new consumers, new workforce, businesses need to adapt and change. One thing you mentioned is AI, and a lot of people say it's something they've never heard of or they have, and some people think it's going to be the end of the workforce. Businesses are investing a lot of money to replace this cost, and the cost, I believe, is the workforce. Do you find that to be an accurate statement, or would you say that it's kind of more just a tool that we're going to learn to work with?
It's funny, I often jokingly refer to myself as a Luddite because working in tech, I really don't appreciate tech that's built for tech's sake. I like tech that solves problems. So that can apply to everything from the Industrial Revolution through to now when we're talking about AI. Certain things are made redundant. Usually that brings about a whole new slew of jobs and opportunities. And it just requires people to be flexible and always approach problems with a curious mindset and be willing to learn, right? And when it comes to tech, I am one of the first people where When I got into the ad tech industry, I got so much wrong. I had never dealt with tech before. So the learning curve was very steep. And I always say, if I can understand everything that I do about programmatic pipes and data and all of this, then truly anybody can.
Yeah, speaking of tools, it seems like businesses either have too many tools or they don't have enough or just not the right ones. Is there a foundational set of tools that you recommend for any business and ones that they should look out for?
I always think that when you're at the Cheesecake Factory or something of the sort, the menu will give you analysis paralysis. And it's something that we have to be very careful of in the workforce because there's always going to be a new vendor. There's always going to be a new product. And this is the strategy side of me, but also just the pragma. What are our challenges? And what do we need to solve them? And that what needs to be kept in mind when evaluating partners and platforms to implement internally. Because even if a platform says it's like a super easy startup or integration, there's always going to be work. There's always going to be elements that need troubleshooting. So choose partners wisely, choose people that you're going to want to work with on a day-to-day basis, and then also choose tech that has a vision and is not going to be redundant, has the team there to be able to continue to build it out to your needs. And oftentimes, depending on the size of the company, it's very tempting in whatever industry you might be in to think that proprietary tech is going to be some sort of secret sauce. Usually it's the pipes needed. It's like hydro or electricity just to make sure that your business is running efficiently. So what I would say there too is if you're thinking about investing in something proprietary, really compare all of what's needed there to what's available in the market already and whether or not a competitive advantage will be established by going the proprietary route. And I see you nodding, and I'm curious if you have experience in that as well.
Yeah, just the proprietary meaning someone else's tool that is new to the market or wanting to invest and develop your own tool.
Correct.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
You know how it is because you see how frustrating it can be with a new tool. Sure, it's a shiny object, it does some cool things, but I like your analogy of it's really just the pipes, it's just the tools to get you there. The secret sauce is, I think, within your
Yes.
marketing, your copy, your audience, how you're kind of crafting that message all together.
It's your people, it's how they treat their colleagues and your clients, and it definitely comes down to that as opposed to typically, if you think that you can build something better, by all means give it a go, but just make sure you're doing the proper evaluation.
Absolutely, because it can get pretty sticky pretty quickly while you're working with trying to create your own tools or systems. But there are some cool mini SaaS tech software pieces that can be created using no-code platforms today. So you don't have to build a robust system, but you can solve a very unique problem, which is really cool in technology. But I agreed, it's about what your unique situation is in the business. This tool may not fit for another one because they have unique needs and solutions for each problem.
Are there any names of companies that you want to plug on that note that could help kickstart?
I don't have any that I need to promote, but if there's any tools or suggestions that you recommend for people to start with, there's some of the big players out there. They're not always accessible. The HubSpot and Salesforce, the big enterprise software, but there's other ones that seem to be fit more for solopreneurs. So yeah, feel free to share your recommendations.
Nothing on my side either when it comes to that head start, but just opening the door, and maybe that's something that listeners can write in about.
If people don't mind getting distracted by the shiny objects and those small pieces of software, a great website is AppSumo. I have a book sitting there from one of the founders called Million Dollar Weekend. I believe his name is Noah Kagan, but he started this idea. He just wanted discounts on beef jerky. So he wanted an app, kind of like a flight of beef jerky, get a little variety. He asked his friends, would this work? Would you pay me money for it? And that eventually turned into a software company. He gets deals and discounts for certain software. So it's like a Groupon for software. But in his book, he brought to the table was seeking product validation first. You don't need a business name or a website to even get started. Go ask your potential audience, your friends and family, would you pay me money if I put the solution together? So I think that that's a great way if you're on a shoestring budget to be able to validate your product within a market before you even invest all this time building an app or trying to solve a problem that may not even have demand in the end.
I could not agree more with that. Like choosing the name and building a brand is definitely the fun part. And I think that is why so many people start there, but that is not the guarantee of success from step one.
Yes, absolutely. Is there a certain approach you like to take with either working with clients or just how you work with a business as a whole? Do you work with specific types of businesses as well, or are you just kind of keeping your mind open to a little bit of everything?
Well, I have largely worked in ad tech, and with the projects that I'm looking at now, it spans other industries and types of companies, which is so great for anybody who's listening who thinks that they might have been pigeonholed into a certain industry or position. There are many skills that are transferable to other things. That's been a fun and rewarding experience as part of the whole consulting element. And what I love is just encouraging clients to lay everything out on the table, because even certain things that you think are going well could typically be optimized or just thought of in a different way. So you want the whole picture, you want all the chaos. And then my favorite thing is like organizing it, Marie Kondo, the environment that I've been put into. And I like putting that puzzle back together. That's my thing.
I really like that approach, and it is important for these businesses to lay it out all on the table. I kind of refer it to, hey, treat me like a lawyer. Tell me all the good and the bad, because we really need to see what we're working with here. And then, like you said, you put the puzzle pieces back together later. So that's really cool. But ad tech. So tell me more about this industry, what you kind of learned from that.
Oh gosh, it combines two great, amazing things that humans use on a daily basis. You have advertising, which we're exposed to a lot during our waking hours, and the tech side of things. It makes it easier and more fitting typically for us to be exposed to ads that are more suited to how we see the world. And the advertising side of things is I love the idea of being able to influence a decision or just educate through advertising. And branding is my favorite element of this because there's so much psychology that goes on through branding, and then bringing that into a media plan, figuring out the best ways to reach people in a truly impactful way that's suited to the brand. Like I could talk about this all day. So they go hand in hand. You need the data from the tech side and the platforms and pipes from the tech side to make sure that the delivery and the measurement is on point. But when it comes down to a brand's decision to put something out there, put a piece of creative out there and make people laugh or make people feel bad to get them to do something. It's just psychologically, it's so fascinating.
It is. Human behavior, the psychology behind it, our conscious and subconscious minds that go into decision making. It's really fascinating. And I always hope that the people who have this knowledge and power use it for good instead of bad, because just like any tool or knowledge, it can be used for good or evil. But something you mentioned within your advertising is simply just educating people. Sometimes an ad doesn't have to be an ad. You don't always have to go for the straight sale. This content helps to build relationships and nurture them. And education is a huge piece of that. So when you build a content strategy, a lot of it focused around education.
Totally depends on the product or service and its stage of life cycle and all of that. But there are certain examples that I will see around, like if I'm out in Toronto or wherever I may be, PSAs on billboards and bus shelter ads. I find those are very impactful, whether it's reminding you to get some sort of health checkup. It can just trigger for people, hopefully, something that maybe otherwise finding that they had would have been too late. Maybe it's rose-colored glasses, but there's one campaign that ran in Australia years ago, and it was for Parkinson's research, and it was about the positive influence of dancing on people with Parkinson's. And that one, that hits close to home because my grandfather unfortunately had Parkinson's later on in life, and he loved to dance. So there are just things like that, when done appropriately, can make a big difference in people's lives. And again, everybody will engage with an ad in a different way based on what they've been exposed to in the past in their own lives.
Absolutely. And when it comes to what is it looking for a business who's going to be failing in 2025? What are they doing wrong that is gonna hurt them, that won't let them continue on into the years ahead?
What a good question. I do a presentation sometimes called Don't Be a Dinosaur. And it summarizes so many different companies, like Blockbuster is one example that went extinct. And you ask yourself, like, okay, why? What's the common denominator for companies that go under or fall behind? And I think a lot of it is just rigidity and not being flexible and just assuming that things are going to always be the way that they are. I thrive off of change. I'm like one of those weird people that if things aren't changing constantly, I'm not okay. And I realize that that's an anomaly because most people, they want things to stay the same. And so in the workplace, you're going to have to keep in mind that regardless of changing consumer trends or needs, employees are probably going to want to do the same job function and have business as usual because that's their comfort zone. We could talk about education on the adoption of AI or what have you. I think a lot of it is just making sure that there are programs in place to constantly keep employees in a slight state of discomfort so that when push comes to shove, they really do have that hard skill available of, okay, and now we're going to pivot.
Absolutely. That ability and just desire to be a lifelong learner, I think could be very valuable for anyone who's in the workforce right now or any business owner or entrepreneur out there. That thirst for knowledge and information just adds to your skill set. As long as you're willing to figure stuff out, I think you can do or learn almost anything. And it's just a better skill set for the workforce as well to help you climb.
Definitely. And also, I think if someone was to say, what's one of your biggest skills? It's coming up with questions. So, Chris, you actually have like my dream job, which is asking people questions and then
You need to
just
start a podcast.
yeah, exactly. And listening to what they have to say. And you'll find that if you're running a company, encourage, regardless of what the employee does, if they have external clients, if they handle partnerships, if they're dealing internally, always set most of the time aside in a meeting to be asking questions because you're going to learn so much. And I do think that's how you stay ahead of competition is if you're consistently checking in with your clients and understanding what else is out there, what their challenges are. That's how you tweak a product. And going back to how we started, to avoid making something that nobody wants to buy, check in with them. What is a pain point that they are willing to pay for to make go away?
One thing you mentioned is the power of asking questions. And a lot of the time when I'm asking people, what should businesses look for when trying to hire a consultant or someone to guide them through marketing? And typically that's the answer I hear. Do you agree with that as well? You have to look for someone who's asking a lot of questions and the right questions too.
Asking the right questions and then also look for a track record of delivery because it's very easy. It's tricky. I think sometimes consulting can get a bit of a bad reputation because people consider consultants to be third parties that come in and will stay as long as they possibly can. And they might tell you what certain people on your team already know, and they're going to take a lot of money and they're never going to leave. And I think it can be helpful if it's project oriented and the initial scope is very much geared to one specific task, because that way you can really set a time frame and you can make sure that both parties are engaged in delivering the work that has been asked of. And I think once you get to that point, then you can look at expanding a relationship there.
Absolutely. One thing you mentioned just within the seminar is that don't be a dinosaur and that unwillingness to change. Things are changing both on the consumer side and for the workforce as well. And that's dramatically going to impact your business. If you're wondering why the tactics and strategies you used 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago just isn't the same, well, times are changing. This isn't a hard problem to solve, but it's right in front of our faces. And it's something that we need to fix and adapt to. Otherwise, our business just won't exist anymore.
Exactly. And I think the generational disparities are very evident right now because you have people who are running companies that came from a time where faxes were still being sent. I definitely sent faxes when I was starting out. And people who communicate like just in emojis and who maybe did some school totally remotely. And there's just a lot of differences in expectations. There's differences in learned behavior. And that is something that I condone time spent together in person. It's just, I gained so much from being able to sit at a table while my boss or my skip level was having a call. I could learn how to understand how that was conducted or listening into certain conversations that happen in the hallway. There are many elements there through osmosis of being together in person that will help make sure that there's a bridge between the different people working together right now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that directly ties in with a lot of your leadership experience. Business owners need to take charge and be the leader, especially both solo and then when they start to grow their team and start to scale. What should they be focusing on trying to deliver that workforce to attract and retain talent so that way their business just starts to scale with them?
I'm a big believer in perception equity. So I always measure myself when I'm in a big company and I was growing. If I look around and people are performing less than me, but being rewarded the same or more, it's tempting to want to reduce your level of productivity to what theirs is. And given that's not really the way that I roll, I always want to give 110%. It can make me bitter, and that's not my best state. And on the flip side, if you look around and you see people who are really doing a good job and are being rewarded appropriately, it's motivation to make you want to do the same. So I explain that because when I'm hiring, I want to bring in people who are whip smart and who are fun to work with and who will make sure that the environment is one that organically is productive and encourages people to be their best selves and work hard. So that's probably tip number one is even for certain managers, as they're growing at the end of their career, it can be tempting to want to hire people who have a little bit less of a skill set or who aren't a threat, if you will. Bring in the smartest people that you can find and the people with the best reputation. And it makes your job a lot easier as a manager. If you're not like always having to be in the weeds and correcting work and so on, it makes it a lot more collaborative. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. And the other for leaders is just to remind ourselves, usually if you're in a management position, it means that you worked hard and you've proven yourself to a certain degree, and you're probably going to be a bit hard on yourself because of that. So just to remind ourselves that nobody's perfect. There's a lot of different management styles, and you just have to find the one that best suits you and make sure that fits with the company that you're at. And once again, the people that you're hiring.
Yes, absolutely. One point that you brought up is just the cost with paying for skills. You're going to pay either way. So you're either spending your own time to train this employee, or you do it right and you're going to pay up front with the money. But now two people can work independently with less oversight and review. So I think that's the efficient outcome. A lot of these businesses, unfortunately, are just laying off people and they have to hire back again. And it seems like this ever revolving door. I don't understand this practice. I hope it changes to be more focused on attracting and retaining the right people and this merit and rewards based program. The perceived equity, give them a seat at the table, let them be rewarded for their accomplishments. I would want to work for a place like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I have encountered people who enjoy being micromanaged. It goes back to the comfort thing or a need for consistent approval or input, and that is totally fine. It's just I don't work that way. I like to be given autonomy. I love having people to go to if I need to troubleshoot a situation like that is important, but knowing that somebody trusts me to figure out a way to get something done that might not be the way that they would do it, but it is all in the same. It gets you there. I like that. And so I would say that most people that I bring into my orbit function the same. It's a nice balance of you go run your job like you're running your own company, and I trust you because you're a professional and go do what you need to do. And I'm here if you want a high five about an accomplishment or if there was a mistake or there's a problem, and let's talk about it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's important to have that balance and find the right workflow and style that matches with you. And it is true that some people prefer to have that leader, to be micromanaged, to be given tasks and direction, as opposed to the more independent sort of thinkers. But it's adapting to that style or making sure you're hiring the right people in the first place. That way they just match your culture there.
Definitely. I think there can be a lot of time wasted on different management efforts to whether it's KPIs or OKRs or however you want to set goals. There's a lot there that I just find to be not needed. So long as the company vision is very much understood by everybody on the team and everybody has a couple of goals that are going to contribute to whether it's revenue or efficiencies or whatever it might be, great. Let's set those and let's keep moving instead of constantly tinkering with the task management. But some people live for those things. I'm just not, I can be detail oriented if I'm editing, a piece of writing. The rest, that's not for me. I'm more
No,
macro.
absolutely. But I think that highlights empowering your workforce to utilize the skills and assets that they bring to the table. What are they passionate about? What are they excited about? What are they great at? then find ways to work that in, I think they'll feel more fulfilled. And then you are getting a better end result and you're now utilizing them in different ways. And also just letting them run with something and be creative, less direction, and just see what they come up with because you never know what they're going to bring to the table. I've often been amazed. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that was possible or that was a thing. So empower your team.
Absolutely. And that's one thing too, where from the marketing standpoint, especially in media planning and buying, I'm a big advocate of having a bit of a slush fund or an experiment fund because a lot of things that you can get into this habit of, okay, it worked last time, so I'm going to do the same thing this time. And at a certain point, it's going to stop working typically. So if you constantly have a bit of a budget to tap into to take some risks and know that some of it is not going to turn out the way that you had hoped. It's all part of the learning process. And then there are certain things that could really work well or go viral or whatever it is. It's a very good ROI on that bit of money there. It's the same thing like I recently started dabbling in stand-up comedy and there's no Netflix special coming out anytime soon, but it's been interesting just to learn the format of how people get on stage and how they write. And some of the jokes that you think are going to be funny don't tend to land. And it's like the lines that you don't think are funny at all are the ones that really get a laugh. And so that can be applied to the workplace too, especially when it comes to dabbling and experimenting. It's just you never know.
Yes, the workplace, and I think even with marketing messaging as well, you think a campaign is going to do great. Like, this is the best copy ever. This will be compelling. And it falls flat in something you're like, I'm throwing this image in because it's something to throw into our A/B test. And suddenly it does great. And you're like, this is blowing my mind. What is happening here?
Exactly. And that's why I always tell people never create a campaign thinking that it's going to go viral. I feel like that's the worst thing that you could do because it's usually won't happen. It's the things that were not anticipated and usually those very real human moments that people can relate to where that catches on. There was a guy in Toronto who was selling a cheese string from his fridge and he put an ad on a billboard and that went viral. It was the biggest story. People were like, they were offering all these different things that they would trade him for the cheese string, and it's ridiculous. And that's why I love it.
That is hilarious. Do you see a blending of comedy into marketing? How we can use some of the skills and assets from comedy into our marketing messaging? Because it seems like those are the types of content that do pretty well or people are engaging with. What can we learn from comedy and incorporate it into our marketing and business plan?
You are so right. And obviously, there's always a time and a place depending on the brand and the topic and the subject matter and the audience and all of that. But typically speaking, ads that have a comedic twist to them are going to perform better. People, obviously, who doesn't like to smile or laugh? So people are going to have more positive attitude towards these types of ads. And then that usually has a direct linear correlation with lower funnel KPIs in terms of their opportunity to their consideration, their buy, etc. So I have noticed an uptick in brands leaning into the funny, if you will. I think it's probably just a testament to everything since COVID. It's just life can be tough for so many different reasons. And if a brand can just make people go, that's funny, it goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're desperate and searching for something a little bit different or more. Just post-COVID, things changed a bit. Prices are rising. So corporations and businesses are trying to find new ways to actually connect with their audience and ideal buyer here. What can they learn as prices continue to rise, as competition continues to enter the market? How are businesses going to compete and stay ahead, manage these costs, and still justify these price increases?
What you just said made me think about the idea that I think there's also a related shift from brands promoting a lot of aspirational figures and so on to make you compelled to buy their product. It's shifted to more like relational, can I relate to this brand or their message instead of making you want to become it. And I quite like that.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of different approaches people can take to their marketing plan and the strategy, whether it's comedy or serious, story driven, pain point solution. There's so many different templates available to us. It just takes a little bit of experimenting, but that's what I like. This is the only topic like marketing and technology, that's continuing education didn't absolutely hurt my will to live because I'm so
No.
excited about marketing tech. Anything else, I'm like, it's just not interesting. But I love hearing about the new tools and things that are coming out. I feel like it's empowering more solopreneurs and business owners to have access and resources to the tools that the big box companies had. No longer need this resource. Now we have tools and technology and just different tools available to us. So it's kind of like this new Wild West of business opportunity.
Yeah, the only limitation is where your brain can take a concept. And that's a very human element. Humans are still, at least this point in time, we're still driving the machine and using the machine. So we're the ones who are still the creators. And I hope that's empowering to listeners. And yeah, I think that AI is very similar as a term to what data was 5, 10 years ago, where everybody was obsessed with big data and it was such a loaded term. AI is also a very loaded term, and that's where it's unpack what your challenges are, what your goals are, and then evaluate how you want to get there. And then there are going to be AI-enabled tools that can help you make it more efficient. But first, it's on you to figure out the steps that need to get done, right? It's not just like, I'm going to feed this into AI and it's going to do the rest for me.
Right. You actually have to figure out what you want to do with it and how can I apply and create use cases for this that are actually practical for your business. And now, Stephanie, where can people find out more about you online and get connected with you?
LinkedIn, of course. So just find my profile, Stephanie Gutnik on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And we'll have that link available down in the show notes and the description for everybody. Stephanie, what are you looking forward to in 2025? You have this new business, you're bringing this experience with you. What are you looking forward to? Do you have any special plans?
I think just a bit of levity, if you will. We've been talking a lot about humor being inserted into campaigns, and I've really enjoyed watching a bit of a shift from performance marketing to brand marketing and seeing where brands are taking their overall image and how they engage with people. And it seems like they're just starting to have a bit of fun with it. So if we could look at what 2025 brings, I'd like it to be a bit lighter and a bit more fun. And I'm just putting that out into the universe.
That's very exciting. Now, something that's interesting to me is that when I think of the more corporate, stuffy brands, I almost feel like a suit and a tie, and then more relaxed, a bit more casual. And I feel like there's been this shift both with brands, but the changes with influencers and creators online. You don't have to have well-produced content to go viral or have something that connects with people. What do you think businesses can learn from that shift in creators, influencers, and less production value?
I think it just goes back once again to being relatable. And in a world where the past little while we've been hyper exposed to filters and people projecting things into the space that narratives that aren't necessarily true. And I think there's this desire, I won't use the word authentic because that's been overplayed, but people want real and warts and all. So I think if you're running a company of 10,000 plus people, once again, as a leader, be real. And I had that at Yahoo, actually. The CEO at one point recommended that people just step outside and go for a little walk at one point in the day. And it's something as small as that where it's just a very real, this manager cares about our well-being, understands the importance of getting some fresh air and a little bit of sunshine and stepping away from the computer for a minute. And so it's little elements like that of that reality. It's not going to be perfect, but we're all here trying to do our best.
Absolutely. I think just a little bit of sunshine in our lives can go a long way and change our performance overall. Now, Stephanie, if you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to yourself or any other entrepreneur, business owner, someone who's trying to get out there and do something, what is your one piece of advice for them?
Just say chill out. That's the
Chill out,
first thing.
man.
Chill out. And that comes with the wisdom of having gone through certain situations and knowing that everything's going to be okay. But again, like entrepreneurs, people in early stages of their career, if they have that fire, everything is the biggest deal and you can't do anything fast enough. And there is an element where like it's going to get done and just chill out. So get some sleep or whatever it is.
Some
What
great
would you
advice. We
say
all
in
just need to
terms of
chill out.
yeah, in terms of some hindsight advice?
That is some great advice. I think a lot of us need to just take a step back, take a deep breath, and just realize everything will work itself out. Things will be fine. There doesn't have to be the sense of urgency for everything. I think a lot of us get into business to have time and financial freedom. So remember that you don't have to work 68 hours a week. if you don't want to.
Totally. And on the flip side is if you're working on a pitch or a certain project that does require you to put in extra hours, if you have some sort of balance the other times, it's like you're going into it super energized and excited about getting this thing done instead of feeling like your battery is very much empty.
Yes, absolutely. We can definitely put in the hours when we're in that zone of genius and just so excited because we're working on something we're excited about or we're passionate about. That is that fire. And that's okay to absolutely put in those longer hours because you do need to find that balance. You utilize that when you have that power, when that creativity hits.
Totally.
Absolutely. Stephanie, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom, tips, and tricks with us. We appreciate it. So excited to watch your journey unfold as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Chris.